Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining the debate, EU emissions trading system reforms toward the future, organized by SME Connect in cooperation with the Union of Entrepreneurs and Employers and European Enterprise Alliance. In the agenda of today's meeting, we have a debate on the presented topic and a summary coming from member of the European Parliament and representative of the Committee of Industry, Research and Energy, Mr. Jerzy Buzek, who is unfortunately still at the meeting in the Parliament, hoping he will join us on the way. So now I would like to present our speakers. And after that, we will straight start the discussion after a short welcome from our host, Marcin Nowicki. I would like to welcome, in particular, Professor Jos Delbeke, European Investment Bank Chair and Climate Energy Policy and International Carbon Markets. Welcome, Mr. Professor. Professor Jan Deja, Chief Executive and Polish Cement Association and AGH University of Science and Technology. Welcome, Mr. Professor. Mr. Hans Wolf von Koeller, Head of Energy Policy at Steig Group. Welcome. Mr. Antoine Hoxha, Production and Agriculture Director at Fertilizers Europe. Welcome, Antoine. And Mr. Marcin Nowicki, member of European Economic and Social Committee and Vice President of the Union of Entrepreneurs and Employers, and at the same time host of today's event, who I would like to invite to officially open the discussion and welcome our guests.
Thank you very much, Dominika. Good morning to all of you. I'm glad we can raise the topic of the emissions trading system. We analyzed the price allowances right now for over 1 year quarterly. So we present and publish reports, quarterly reports on the price and the bubble also that was created on top of it. I'm not gonna just now enter details about the allowances and its structure. We'll have debate on that. But once again, thank you very much. It's really a great time to discuss it with the presence of Jerzy Buzek, who's greatly involved in the topic in the European Parliament. I hope we can assess what needs to be done in the close future in order somehow to address the issue, the concerns we have in terms of energy prices and stability of the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcin. And now I would like to ask Professor Jos Delbeke, an expert that knows the EU ETS system like no one else, to cover two questions. First question would be, for last several years, you've been very close to implementation and conduct of the system, of EU ETS system. And according to some surveys, not longer than 2 years ago, EU analysts expected that increase of carbon emissions allowances prices not more than 50 euros per metric ton of carbon till 2030. We've got 2022 and the price is around 90 euros, even crossed 90 euros. In your opinion, did something went wrong or rather opposite?
Well, thank you. And it's good to be amongst friends and with whom I worked in the past. So thank you for the invitation. I think you are mentioning one important element on the prices, but also the war in Ukraine is changing the perspective a little bit, because I think, in the beginning, we all thought it would be quickly over, but now the perspective has turned. And I think we all expect a much longer conflict And in any case, our trade relations with Russia are going to be undermined for years to come. And I think that's a new element that we have to take into consideration. You know, the trust has gone in our trading relations with Russia, and that's a new element that will spill over not only to the energy trade, but also raw materials trade, the food price situation, etc. So we are in for a much more problematic situation. Now, a few things I think on the outset. First point, I think in the long term, climate policy and the energy security concerns that we have falling out of Russia are going in the right direction. We need more investments in energy efficiency. We need more renewables. We need more infrastructure. We need more innovations in companies, hydrogen and green hydrogen, you know, and the infrastructure related to that. So in the long term, it is all pointing in the same direction. But the problem is, and that's my second point, in the short term where prices for consumers and for small companies, for big companies, and also for households have gone, you know, through the roof. Now, it's very difficult to dissociate exactly what the impact is of the carbon market and of the international energy price situation. But we all agree, I think, that the predominant impact comes from the new energy situation that we have, you know, in the build-up and now in the war with Ukraine. And so there is a strong call for corrections to be made to consumers. And I think the bad news is if the conflict takes longer, then we are going to see a brutal reality coming next winter, because the war, you know, started at the end of the winter. But if we go into a next winter, that's going to be very hard. But there is one plea I would like to make, and that is that whatever corrections are made, we are not going to neutralize the price signal entirely, because all of us in business and in households have to look at energy efficiency improvements. That is something that is very important. So I would hope that we have very targeted policies to help us all out. Then comes to my third point, and that is exactly on the prices you were making. You know, prices are indeed around 90 euros. There are many views around, but I think we are at the upper margin of what economists thought they would reach at this point in time. I think rather than the 50 euros, Monica, that you mentioned, I think we are rather, you know, in the range 60 to 90 euros. That is what economists have been reporting to us. And when I read the ESMA report, says, you know, and I interpret freely, we are still in the range where the fundamentals of the fundamentals are driving the prices on the carbon market. But we have to be very vigilant. And we have to do better monitoring. We have to do good data. And in the negotiations that I see unfolding in the European Parliament and in the Council, I think that a lot of people are calling for a more flexible opening of the famous Article 29A. If things would get out of hand, what are we going to do? And I support that because, as I said, we are at the higher end of the, you know, the price range that is reflecting the fundamentals. But, you know, that could change also with the continuing war and the situation on energy markets. Now, there is a fourth element I would like to make, is that I think we should take it for granted that the ambition level for 2030, which is for the ETS 61% below 2005, is going to stay. That's already part of the climate law. And I think that ambition level should not be touched. But inside that ambition level, there are possibilities to do more immediately or more at the end of the period. And there are modulations that are under discussion. There is the intake of the market stability reserve. There is the rebasing, you know, on the proposal in 2024. There is what to do with the allowances that would have been invalidated when they come out of the market stability reserve, according to the legislation. So these are elements I think that we can address, but I would like to insist within the ambition level of 61% 2030 based on 2005. And if we would play around with one or the other variable, the quid pro quo is that the linear reduction factor would have to go up. With the rebasing and the MSR, we have a linear reduction factor of 4.2% per year. If we are going to shift around, the efforts, then we will have to have a higher linear reduction factor, spreading out the impact over the period at large. And there is a final point I would like to make, and that is that given the war, we have to get in companies in manufacturing industry, in particular in steel and cement, and we have to move away from our carbon emissions faster than what we thought we would do over time. And there is a lot of talk about new innovations. There is a lot of talk about green hydrogen. There is a lot of talk about, a fundamental shift away from the blast furnace as we know it, or for carbon capture and storage. And I would make a strong plea to have a second look at the free allocation. The free allocation system we have now looks very different compared to where we were before. With prices of 30, 40 euros, the free allocation worked well to counter carbon leakage. But now with prices twice as high as at that period, are we not going to overcompensate in the light of free allocation? Or are we not going to support sufficiently the companies that are doing very expensive investments in the field of hydrogen or carbon capture and storage and things like that? So the free allocation is a very important pot of money. Over the period, roughly, we can debate what price we are using, but we talk at least 200 billion euros. Are we just going to hand it out like that? Or are we going to focus it more to those companies that are making the investments now that we need in the future on green hydrogen, on the infrastructure we need, on carbon capture and storage, etc. So I would hope that the negotiators in Council and Parliament, and also you in following the debate in Poland, where a good solid base for the manufacturing industry is so important for the future, that we can spare out a fraction of the free allocation to support more actively the transition we are facing for the future. So I will limit my comments to that. I hope that I responded to some of the questions, and I'm of course very happy to participate in the debate. And again, it's a real pleasure to be with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Professor. Just short one more question. I think that we all agree about the long perspective and the goals we have had in Europe, but it's actually perfect that you mentioned the influence of war on EU ETS system, because it touches the problem that we wanted to raise also today, involvement of financial institutions in this market and speculants activity, because exactly the first 2 days of the war, we saw on the market decrease of prices, which for sure wasn't caused by participants of the market of the EU ETS system, but was caused by speculants that wanted to sell their allowances. So from your perspective, taking into account this short term and these dilations you've mentioned in composing the law for the next future, for the next few years, if we would have a consensus among member countries about the reform on EU ETS system, what would you suggest to enhance the effectiveness of the system, but at the same time to secure it from speculants' activity?
Well, I was reading the ESMA report with a lot of attention, and you were rightly indicating, when the war started, we had a quite pronounced dip. But that was very comparable to what happened on all financial markets. And after, less than a week, the prices recovered. So I think that it has been proven that the market stability reserve that was intended to function in a similar crisis has been functioning well. And the ESMA report that contains a lot of new information has strongly stated that what we saw on the carbon market was not different from what we saw on other financial markets. Also, the positions taken by speculators, there are statistics showing that the positions taken by the financial institutions, we call it speculation between inverted commas, was not very different compared to the activity on financial players in other markets. So I would say, and I would like to repeat, that so far we have not seen irregularities on the ETS carbon market. But I'm cautious at the same time that this could occur in the future. So we have been cautious and we should be cautious. And I hope that the negotiators in Council and Parliament are going to construct some caveats so that we can have much better data and much better monitoring. But according to the evidence that is very rich in the ESMA report, what happened on the carbon market was not different from what happened on other, equity and bond markets that we have seen immediately after the war. So I would like to qualify at least that element.
Right. Thank you very much. And I think that it's also an important problem to discuss whether internal markets, technical market of EU ETS of allowances should work at the same construction that other financial markets, because if we look from the perspective of companies where they need to adjust to such huge increase of prices and variation of prices similar to financial markets, then I guess we touched the problem. And now I would like to ask Mr. Hans Wolf von Koeller, a representative of Energy Entrepreneur, to ask two of questions. First of it is your company has long experience power generation, and from the perspective of multiple large-scale power plants management, providing power and heat generation for decades, would you share with us your perspective, how your company deals lately with such a price dynamic on EU aids, EU European Union allowances market?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be with you today. Technically works well, and the same as our Zoom conference, the ETS is working well too. So but the problem, just to make this more operator and investor oriented statement first, is that we are changing the rules permanently. This is what is the problem for us. We are not an industry company, we are a power company. You said that we are focused on, we have to buy all our needed certificates for our bigger plants. For many years now, we are used to it, to treat it and handle it in the combination with fuel prices and electricity prices or high heat prices. We have, on the one hand side, of course, we have deals with our customers, or on the power exchange, there is also these the mechanisms are well established. To cope with huge price changes. The turbulences of the last months were different, of course, but this is not only because of the war. The war is part of it, I would say. But the increase of the ETS price has to do not so much with, in the last years, not so much with the expectation of a Ukraine crisis in the Ukraine. This is politically driven, and we have experienced a lot of changes on the basis, the amounts, and the expectation about what is going to happen due to increased ambition. The discussion about who's taking part in the ETS. You see this directly in the price development. And so we are always worried that the next step of market interferences by states, by exemptions, by special rules, by bonus and maluses, and so on, is now going on. And the next step will be the idea of restrict the market access for special participants. So this is really our worry, and this is hard to handle. I do not know anyone who is able to calculate this, just the market stability reserve and the mechanisms which are what is going to happen under this system in future, because just with the LRF you can expect what is the needed emissions, what has to be there in the market, and this is fine. And there is the intertemporal aspect of this. So you can buy also, if you have the power on the balance sheet, you can buy for a longer time certificates, and you can do your hedging on your own or with banks or with the long-term selling of power with the ETS having in mind. So, but if there is the year-to-year market interference by this market stability reserve, you cannot really prognose this. So the hedging is going up. The cost for this is just going up. And on the other hand, we have been experiencing a lot of step in the capacity, which is very, very important for the power prices. And as today we are discussing always the CO2 prices isolated, because the industry, which, and for our industrial colleagues, is of course it's new now that they have to buy more and more of the certificates to a full degree, not like we do it for lots of years now. And this is the next interferences are what we are really afraid. Yeah, so this is hard to handle. This is, I think, my biggest worry. We need the possibility to hedge. We need markets, electricity markets, power markets, and then we can hedge it. If we do not have this, then the hedging is very, very expensive and problematic. But we can cope with problems, of course, with this high volatility at the moment. But we are the main driver is not financial services. The main driver is politics, and this should stop a little bit, or we should come back to a market, and then we can expect what is going to happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Hans, for your answer. In the meantime, Mr. Jerzy Buzek join us. Warm welcome, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good morning, dear participants. Congratulations for your meeting. Maybe I will say a few words at the end of your meeting. I am late. I'm sorry about that. It was necessary for me to stay with European Parliament negotiating team on gas storage, and it is a very urgent procedure, and we should make it working in 2 months. So it will be something like record in the time of European Union since the beginning of the whole process and European Commission proposal on the table in Parliament until the proposal working as a regulation. 3 months altogether. Absolutely unusual situation. Sorry about my being too late. Congratulations for the meeting. I will say a few words at the end, if I may. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to have you. I'd like to come back to Hans von Koeller with another question. The EU ETS system was launched in 2005. And looking back, how did it influence to your company energy transition? And is it still an incentive for further improvements, or only a growing cost that charge customers at a large scale?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Of course, it has influenced our investment decisions, but in the former time, there was the ambition was not the same like today. There was the idea of minus 80%, and the ambition of our company was to belong to the best in class. Now, with the ambition to reduce via the ETS to zero, not having in Germany the CCS potential, as you know, because there's law hindering this, so the technical options for this is not there. So this is now in the combination more a problem for all investments. As our gas plant we are bringing to operation in this year, there we are worried not to have a price problem, the ETS price problem, but to have enough certificates. Yeah. So the combination we do expect of market interferences on the price level with exemptions for regions, branches, and so on, there might be not enough certificates for gas plants in some years, and I don't know how this will work out. So this the combination, it's now not incentivizing investments in efficiency, but of course we are looking on different technologies, but there is not the market established as we would like to have it. So if we need, markets are to serve the customer's needs under a special and this is going on. The price they are, which is affordable, and so on. This is the way we are doing it. But we're serving needs, of course, customers, of course. If there is just a technological exclusion of lots of some plant types, then you cannot be best in class anymore. So at the moment, it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen, and the price step-ins are the next worry we do have. But just this is just a kind of a variable in our model and our expectation, and therefore we need the most important thing we do need is to have more stability in the system, and then we can cope with this. But to be over ambitious to reduce it to zero and with very ambitious LRFs, this will just hinder investments. This is for sure, just because the hydrogen aspect was mentioned. The CO2 aspect is not the main thing with this. You can do this. You can burn hydrogen also in future in gas plants, but the hydrogen has to be cheap, and the electricity price is the main thing for this. And I do not see enough ambition to do things to keep the power prices so low that you can afford to produce hydrogen in that amount we are assuming at the moment. And this is what we are looking at. And so it is not only the question of the ETS price, it's always the combination of different prices. And there, if we leave step by step the market, and we are doing this now with great steps due to the crisis, the ETS is just one part of the problems which has to be compensated by different measures, and you never can expect this from a company side. What is the next way to compensate this by politicians?
Correct, and thank you very much for your comment. And now I would like to ask about entrepreneurs' perspective. Professor Jan Deja, please tell us from the production of cement. It is the industry that is energy intensive, and from this perspective, what has changed over the last couple of months while electricity prices share in total operating costs increased dramatically, how it influenced to the cement business?
Okay, thank you very much. At the university for whole of my life, cement technology, concrete technology are my special fields, and I think for such discussion like today, I'm very happy that I can be here. It's important to say something from inside sector. I'm working also for Polish Cement Association for last 30 years, and I observe, I know Polish cement industry and also European cement industry very well. Our industry was completely modernized during last 25 years, for example. Today, Poland is the second cement producer in Europe, and for us, a situation on CO2 market, it's absolutely crucial. It's absolutely fundamental. Maybe it is important to repeat once again that big part of CO2 which is emitted in cement sector, it's CO2 coming from decomposition of calcium carbonate. About 63% in our case, it's CO2 where our possibilities to reduce such emission is very, very limited. Maybe it's also important to say that during last year, I'm speaking about third period of ETS system, Polish cement producers have to buy yearly about 3 million tons of allowances. It's very easy to calculate almost 300 million euros yearly. It means for us, free allowances are extremely important, and I'm in the opinion that independent from CBAM, which will come in the future, we will need free allowances to be competitive on the market. Of course, it's one side, prices of CO2 allowances, and second field, prices of energy. During last months, as you said, prices of electrical energy are a few times higher, and we have to remember that in cement industry, in cement production, the cost of electrical energy is about 35%, according to our calculation. It means influence of prices of energy, electrical energy is absolutely crucial. What is our problem? Maybe I would like to add something. Probably you know that cement sector in Europe asked for many years to come on the list of sectors with state aid guidelines. We are not on the list. The problem is market intensity. We have a little bit over 10%. According to Commission, it should be over 20%. Cement, I can say, is so cheap material that such market intensity over 20%, it's practically cement out of Europe, not only from Poland. And once again, we cry. I can say. I should say, please check once again that when we would like to have cement industry in Europe, we have a little bit another conditions. What is also important, I think, cement sector probably was the first which declared that we will be ready with carbon neutrality in 2050. We accept also Fit for 55, but we need support. This support concerning compensation of electricity prices is absolutely crucial for us. We have to remember also that we are preparing now for carbon capture and storage, carbon capture and usage, for new rules for environmental protection in our industry. It is bounded with amount of electricity we need. We calculate that even 2, maybe 3 times more electrical energy we need in the near future. It means after 5, 10 years. It means prices are absolutely
crucial. And Mr. Professor, you've mentioned Fit for 55. This is also what I wanted to ask you, a separate self-standing emissions trading system for fuel distribution for road transport and especially building sector. This is what I want to ask about. Would be established starting from 2025. In your opinion, what impacts this new law will have on cement producers and wider on construction market?
Okay, generally, we as a cement people, we accept these new ideas. I think that this idea concerning separate market for buildings is important, because we have to remember that about 40% of energy we use for buildings, and buildings are responsible for about 36% of CO2 or green gases emissions. Generally speaking, I can say that cement and finally concrete can be very helpful in this renovation way, because it's absolutely needed. We have to go lower with energy transportation in our building, and concrete with its high thermal mass can be very helpful. Can help to reduce energy needed for heating and especially for cooling in all offices, not only in Brussels but also in Krakow, where I am sitting today. We have to use cooling system, and concrete can be very helpful. Absolutely, so, we are proud.
So in short, cement sector is ready to support construction market, construction sector.
Yeah. Yes, and
energy transition.
I think it's also important to know there is no general economy without cement, without concrete. When we will remove cement from Europe, we will buy cement in Turkey, for example, or North Africa. Absolutely, for normal, healthy economy, cement is absolutely needed.
Definitely. Thank you for your comment. And now I would like to ask Antoine Hoxha, another entrepreneur's representative, but from the fertilizers sector. Internally, your company, maybe wider, internal your sector, are there any thoughts that maybe EU ETS system now has a high risk for manipulation? You've mentioned something like that during our short conversation. Can you develop this thought?
Okay, thank you for the invitation first, and I think I can still say good morning, everyone, a couple of minutes. Just to introduce a bit who I'm representing, I'm here speaking on behalf of Fertilizers Europe, that is the European Association of Manufacturers of Fertilizers. And if I look back to 2005, we've already cut almost half of our emissions compared to 2005. And the good news is that our potential is huge. We can go to zero ourselves, so decarbonize food production, and even more because we are producers of ammonia. And I've heard Mr. Delbeke mentioning twice green hydrogen, and who says green hydrogen, of course, means also green ammonia. So we have the potential to decarbonize big parts of the transport. So in that way, it's very exciting times for our industry. We're really at a moment in time where we're starting to have an industrial revolution. It's a very interesting, actually, point because it's an industrial revolution that is not driven by pure economics, but it's driven by environmental concerns in a way. But we're very much interested to go into that direction. And of course, at the same time, we are among the few sectors at the very highest risk of carbon leakage. This is why we have been since the beginning as a sector in favor of a CBAM. We think CBAM is a great idea and we need it. How you design it, we're not fully agreeing with the European Commission on that. We would like to see it different. And in that direction, I welcome also the work done by ITRE committee. There are some very good proposals there. But basically, what we need as an industry is to have the capacity to invest in this industrial revolution. And part of it is having predictable free allocations. Rules are changing all the time, and free allocations are at risk of being cut by the benchmark. If you are a CBAM sector, then there are other rules. So we need to have them, to have the capacity to invest. And when I hear Mr. Delbeke, and I agree on many things with him, but not on everything, when I hear he's worried about overcompensating the industry, I'm more concerned of overburdening the industry. We're a small sector, fertilizers, but we're very close to food security. And in these times where food security is high, we are one of the really key sectors that Europe needs to maintain. So all this to say, we need stability, predictability, and we think there is a risk of speculation. Now, you can look back at the ESMA reports and what happened, and I'm not an economist, I cannot really judge on this, but if we look forward, we think that there is a risk of speculation. So anything that will reduce that risk is a good thing in our view. So the idea of this proposal of amendment that would exclude financially investors from buying in ETS, we think it's a good direction. Of course, there are some other risks that would need to be evaluated because we don't want to go into liquidity problems or ending up in the hands of big utilities. But certainly the direction, we feel it's a good one.
All right, thank you for your comments. Great to have you. Looking at the time, I would like to ask Marcin Nowicki to maybe say a few words about ESMA report that was recalled twice today. Martin, the Union of Entrepreneurs and Employers had reviewed and not only agreed, not exactly agreed with the ESMA report, claiming that the influence of investors on EU ETS market isn't significant. Our organization showed econometric analyses in a dedicated study. Would you tell us more about this?
Yes, thank you. You're right. We don't really agree with the ESMA, even with some critical findings. I mean, to be really bold, the EU ETS is not the market. I mean, we can't call it as an unusual market. The supply of allowances is administratively defined, and which means it's not the market as we think of markets. Since 2019, we have consistently been experiencing difficulties in terms of cost of emission allowances, and from our findings and analysis, the price changes were really up and down overnight significantly. I mean, the changes were really high, and we don't see any point at this stage with the price changing from in January 2019 the level of 20 euro, and then ending up in December 2021 with more than 90 euro. And again, this instability in terms of prices overnight, we don't see the point for financial institutions, hedge funds, to be part of the system. I mean, these entities simply compete for allowances with industrial energy players, especially smaller ones. I mean, I agree there is a challenge of liquidity, but now hedge funds, they know that at the end of the day, smaller players will need allowances, and they can build on that. I mean, basically, it happens at the expense of actual needs of industrial energy companies that manage installations and are obliged at the end of the day to purchase emission allowances. Again, as that's the second issue we raise regarding this kind of market approach, as this is not the market, and we need a predictability in the system, in the sector. We are asking to introduce some sort of a minimum, of a maximum price. The supply is limited, so there should be a cap on the price, perhaps by introducing a penalty for emissions without allowances, which no longer requires the purchase of allowances themselves. So that might be the system, or the scenario. Let me remind you that now, even if you don't you don't purchase allowances, you need to pay a penalty, and on the top of that, again, you are required to purchase allowances. I don't think this is the system, the framework where industry players are really, I can predict the future and the situation in the market. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question. You also support exclusion of financial institutions from the ETS system. Under the proposed concept, only entities being a part of ETS system could buy and sell allowances. Please explain why the solution should be beneficial for EU economy.
I mean, every time we have intermediaries involved, it means that the speculation takes place. That's, as was just said before. That's basically the role and the part of the business for intermediaries to get involved and to speculate on the price and to resale basically the right to, I mean, the allowance for a number of industrial players. This is not the case for really large players. We must be aware that they also do that. I mean, they also, large industrial energy players are also in that position, but definitely to a small scale. And it's definitely part of the long-term strategy to have a stability in terms of operating costs. So again, I mean, as there will be players who are representing industry that also buy in advance large allowances. Still, we don't need hedge funds to be involved and purely speculate in the market.
So the price could come back to fundamentals of the market and like decrease the speculation factor in it. Thank you very much for your comments. And now I would like to ask to sum up and present your position. Mr. Jerzy Buzek, Mr. Prime Minister, I would like to ask you to speak for us.
Thank you very much. I understand that we are about finishing our discussion. Am I right?
We are close to.
Okay, so thank you very much. All of us are certainly thinking on the 17th of May, Tuesday, we'll be voting in the ENVI committee ETS directive. We can ask what for our discussion. I would like to answer. After the voting in ENVI committee, we cannot influence a lot this voting, but after that we'll be voting in the plenary session. And it is also possible to go back with some amendments to the plenary session. And it is absolutely necessary, the pressure from you, from your side, if we are losing something which is absolutely crucial from your point of view, it is absolutely necessary to press on our ENVI committee, but also transport, industry, energy, and research committee. So it is still open for all of you, because the discussion was great. I could not have possibility to listen to all of you, but carbon price, CBAM free equation, risk of speculation, liquidity. And I'm very glad that Professor Jos Delbeke is together with us. Jos, we were working so hard because I understand that Mr. Professor is together with us. And it was great work. You are the leader of our DG Climate as a Director General. So it's great that we can discuss the issue in such a great people with us. And ETS is somehow in the center of all our deliberations in the European Parliament, because we've got a lot of problems: energy costs, energy independence, security of supply, poverty, energy poverty, or how to reconcile the accelerated phase out of coal, especially somebody mentioned it in district heating in some member states. How should we do all of that? And in order to be able to answer the question how to address all these enormous challenges in the spirit of Paris Agreement, we should ask the question: what is the main aim of the ETS system? And I will quote, if I may, the first article of the ETS directive: promote reductions of greenhouse gas emissions in a cost-effective and economically efficient manner. Cost-effective and economically efficient manner. That's very, very important. And very important part of discussion is, of course, a risk of speculation on the ETS market. So it was, as a matter of fact, my amendment supported by Committee on Transport and Tourism as well, because in each committee we achieved a majority for this amendment, a similar amendment we got in Committee on Transport and Tourism. And the main goal of the amendment is to limit access to the ETS system for entities that did not have ETS installations and by extensions do not have compliance obligations to cover the emissions. Some argue, and it was also in your discussion, that speculation support liquidity in the ETS market. We could also have over liquidity, which could be absolutely dangerous. And we know that over liquidity in the year 2008 caused enormous crisis all over the world. So we should be very careful about that. We clearly see that the increase in financial trading could also have contributed to the current increase in volatility and the instability of CO2 allowances prices. For example, the massive ETS prices drop around 30 euro, as far as I remember, that followed Russia's barbaric invasion of Ukraine. It was attributed by many market analysts to the role of speculators. So let us be very careful with all such proposals. After all, ETS system worked for many years without attendance of such institutions on ETS market. We developed something like that a few years ago only. So we should be very careful with that. Let us remember, CO2 allowances instability and lack of predictability could mean higher compliance costs for regulated entities and higher costs of the so much needed green transformation. It was also mentioned by some of you, and this could unfortunately have significant short, long-term consequences on the EU policy objective of decarbonization conducted in the sweetest possible way. Therefore, we have to urgently regulate the role of financial trading, as well as address structural issues with the ETS market design that induce price instability. Well, there are some amendments on that. So if we will lose some crucial amendments, we need still your support. So each committee, transport committee, ENVI committee, and before plenary session, we can go back with some amendments which could be very important for our market and market for ETS. So I'm very thankful for your discussion. I think it is a great time for that, the best possible time, and congratulations for such an idea. And let us still be in contact, because ETS at the end is the most important for our future in the energy transformation, industry transformation, transport transformation, housing transformation, agriculture transformation as well. So ETS will be absolutely crucial. So thank you very much for discussion, and see you next time. Maybe we can win some important amendments as you suggested during our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for your comment and great summary. Thank you very much to all participants, or our great speakers, and everyone who decided to join today's debate. Please contact us in case of further questions or comments about the debates. The topic remains crucial for European economy and will have an impact in a very close future on many entrepreneurs. So we as our organization, we will monitor the situation and keep you updated. Once again, thank you very much for participation and attention, and I wish you a good afternoon.